think so, yeah.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of NLP Upskill Your Life with myself, Mark, and Fintan and Rich. How you doing, lads?
Good
All
morning.
right, lads.
Yeah, it's great to be here again, and for episode 11 of the podcast.
12, is it?
Is it 11 or 12? I think it's.
But they say if you get past 10,
That's it.
Yeah, but
Need
I
more
think
fingers.
I think it's 11. I could be wrong. I have been known to be wrong in the past. But you're all very welcome along to the podcast again, and thanks a lot for joining us. Today we're going to speak around education. Like, there's a really good book that we've read there in the past called Teaching Excellence. It's done by Kate Benson and also Richard Bandler. So it's a really, really good book. It's basically around different ways to teach kids, different methods of learning. Because, as she says in the book, like, if we all were taught the same, there'd be a lot of people that wouldn't learn at all. So, as I found out in school, like, you're all, like, if it didn't suit the same as the other kids, the way they learned, I was behind. So that's what happened to me. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And teachers also put people off doing things as well by saying, going along and going, being very judgmental about how a 7-year-old kid does art, thinking that, I guess they're thinking they're supposed to produce a Picasso masterpiece or something.
Yeah.
yeah, very true. And they can, of course, put a child off doing art, if they feel that not up to scratch,
Yeah. And as well as that, is the way, like, you kind of praise the kids as well. If you kind of say you're really clever, you're really intelligent, instead of praising the effort, like, like, is much more valuable for them. Like, to say, God, you really worked hard to pass that exam, or you really strived and done so well, and encourage them for the next time to try the same way.
Yeah, there's been quite a few studies on that as well, where they've had given the kids tests and exams, and they said to one, as you quite rightly said, Mark, you're highly intelligent, and the other they were told, you work hard. Then they get given more exams, and the other lot who are highly intelligent, or been told they're intelligent, don't work as hard, and they start failing exams, where the other lot, they start excelling because they've been told they work hard and they produce better work.
Yeah, that's right. And as well as that, then when you tell a child or tell a person, or particularly a child, that, oh, you're very clever, you're very smart, then suddenly if they come across a challenging subject, they don't want to appear to not be clever. So rather than, getting help with the subject or acknowledging that they're struggling with that subject, they might be more inclined to try and drop it, or because they don't want to prove, they want to prove that they're still intelligent. To them, it's an acknowledgement that, oh, suddenly I'm not actually intelligent.
Yeah, and it's like, the great point there, because there was one particular one that stands out for me in the book. It has loads of different exercises on the book for different things, like creativity, for spelling is a great one as well, for maths, all different subjects, which is great, because the one from spelling, you just might remember, where you get the child to look at the word, not the world, the word, and then close their eyes and have a mental picture of it, like, and then put different colors, their favorite colors on each letter, and then they get them to open their eyes, and without looking at the word again, you get them to, oh, I'm gone off there, sorry, we'll let it just spit out, sorry. So, like, it's so you get them to write the word down then, and lo and behold, it happened to my daughter. She was struggling a bit with her spelling in school, and I used that technique, and it really helped,
Excellent. That's great. Very well done.
And I guess it would also help build that child's self-esteem as well, by knowing that they are succeeding and not failing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's good for all people, whether you're as a child or as an adult, to recognize that failure in an outcome isn't necessarily a failure.
Bad.
It's exactly that. Basically, what you need to do is have good processes in place. And if you have a good process in place and you follow that process, then that process will continue to improve. So even if you don't get the outcome the first time, or indeed the second time, or any number of times, that once you follow the process, you keep improving, you keep getting closer to the outcome, and then suddenly, eventually, you will get that outcome. And I think that's the important thing to teach kids, really, to teach everybody, kids and adults, not to be focused completely on the outcome. Yes, know what outcome you want, but then to work on the process, because otherwise people will just be, I suppose, like boxing wildly, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
With a boxing ring without knowing exactly what you're going to do, you're going to be just throwing wild punches, and a lot of people do that, and sometimes it works to get through to achieve a goal, but quite often, particularly more complex goals, more difficult outcomes, you do need to have a process in place, and following that process, sure, it might take you a long time to get to the goal, but you know that every time you go out there, you're a little bit better.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Fintan. Yeah, because she mentioned in the book as well. It's all about strategies, doesn't she, Rich? Like, it's like what LLP is really, is to kind of mirror or not match what somebody else is doing well. Like that's what she says in the book as well. For like she even done a great thing. One of the teachers that she was helping, she went to all over the world, kind of helping teachers to excel at their profession, And one of the teachers, what she did was she knew a certain amount of children lived in the same area, and they were getting the bus home together. So so I think they got them, they gave them the same project to work on, and there was stronger people at maths, let's say, so they were learning from them, and there was and in turn they were stronger in English. So because they live in the same room, they're getting the bus home together. They all kind of excelled, and they all got better at the subjects, which is a great part,
Very good. That's excellent.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And was there any part of the book, Rich, you that stood out well for yourself? Like, can you remember?
It's the ideas about how to be more creative. But this wasn't necessarily from the Teaching Excellence book itself per se. But I was watching some guy on social media channel, and he was given a task by his English lecturer. And so they said, right, what you're going to do is for the next 10 weeks or so is write a poem or write a story about a bucket, and just write that in as many ways as you possibly can. And that then improved how he could then write about various different other subjects, because that's his constraint, was that, and that constraint then allowed him to have a more open perspective on other subjects.
Yeah, and I love that, because like sorry for because he's doing it on the book, and then he can move on to something else, like, and do that. That's brilliant. Yeah. Isn't it? Yeah.
So that brings to mind as well something that came up in the Thursday night meetup, Orlando's Thursday night meetup, and we were discussing creativity. And I suppose one of the things I had always grown up with, and this stems back to what you said at the beginning, Mark, was that I didn't think I was any good at art. I wasn't a creative person because I wasn't any good at art. Everyone, my family are all good at art, and that, but I just wasn't. And if I drew a picture, it was like stick figures, and they were doing whatever. But it was only actually that night really that I actually started to consider, well, actually, am I creative? And the answer to that, of course, was I am creative. We're all creative. We're creative in different ways. Like some of the best things I did down through the years was, for example, creating computer systems. I was excellent at that, and I would have to, that would all be born from my own mind, where to start, what did I need to do, who did I need to talk to, all that sort of stuff. And that in itself is creative. But there's so many different ways we're all creative. And just because you can't draw a decent picture or make stuff with, doesn't mean that you're not particularly creative. And it's something that's important for everyone to understand, children and adults.
Exactly. And if people weren't creative, we wouldn't have, say, like the technology we have today. You have to come out somewhere.
That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. Because no, it's a great point to give anybody that's listening as well. To not let themselves be held back by things that you like. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I went to school, and you were nearly given the dunce's hat, like if you didn't know your spelling or know how, like if you didn't write very well or too good. So it's very important, for people that are listening, to not let that hold you back, because quite as Fintan says, we've all got a creative way about, like we all have different ways of being creative.
Yeah, and also if a teacher doesn't, or somebody doesn't consider you very good at art, and you do enjoy doing it, just continue to do it anyway. And the more you do it, the better you'll get. It's like people who, Emily Bronte and people like that, their first books were absolutely terrible. And the first stories were really bad. But as they progressed writing more and more and more, the stories got even better. So it's harken back to what Fintan said earlier about just doing those little things, and those little things will end up into big improvements.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point, Rich and Fintan. Yeah, because even the best singers and the best Beethoven, like the amount of stuff he put out there, the amount of symphonies, or is that what you call them, he put out there, and is only the tip of the iceberg, the ones that actually came really famous and so well known. But if you look at all the other stuff he's done, not saying it'd be too bad, but it could have been mediocre compared to his really good stuff. But the more stuff you do, the more songs you do, the more stories you write, to keep the flow going, you're going to hit on some gold,
Absolutely. And don't forget, when we were talking to Fergal O'Brien, it's one of the things that he himself was passionate about, was his following his processes. That he started off when he was a teenager. There was fellas there much on the team that were better than him, who never made it professionally in snooker, and yet he made it simply by continuing to follow the processes, consistently following them. And even now, that's what he does, consistently follows his processes, and that's where he gets results.
Exactly. Like it's all to really do with mindsets and beliefs as well. That was another part of the podcast. We were going to kind of segue nicely into the next point, like about beliefs. Like we all like have different beliefs from years ago. Do we not? Like,
yeah. So beliefs are kind of clustered around our values, and most of our values are pretty much unconscious, but our beliefs are conscious, and beliefs are the convictions that we generally hold to be true, usually without actual proof or evidence.
Yeah.
So we might, again, going back to saying being bad at art, we might have that belief that we are bad at art because somebody many years ago said that we are bad at it, when in fact the art we produce might be really good in somebody else's opinion.
Yeah, true enough. And don't forget, a lot of what school is about sameness rather than individuality. It's about giving the same curriculum for every child, no matter how they learn, teaching it the same way, no matter what way an individual child. Now, in fairness, there's been an awful lot of improvements in the curriculum since then. There are now, there's support teachers, there's special needs assistants, all that sort of stuff. So there is a huge improvement. At the same time, generally, the curriculum tends to be the same for everyone, regardless.
Yeah.
And like you said there earlier, a teacher might, or I think it was Rich actually said, a teacher might be looking at a picture and humming and hawing and being somewhat judgmental over what a 7-year-old child is producing. But what's the teacher looking for? He's looking for sameness, the same right colors for the trees, the same right colors for the grass, the same right colors for the flowers, drawn with it inside the lines, none of this. I'm quite sure that Van Gogh didn't draw inside the lines, certainly Picasso drew his own lines. So yeah, they certainly wouldn't have passed any 7-year-old's teacher,
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. And like belief, like if you have a belief that you're good at something, that's a good belief to keep. Like, like for instance, if you have your belief that you going out every day for a run or eating healthy is gonna be good for your life, that's gonna serve you well. That's a good belief to have. But then there's other beliefs that it could be wrong, and you can question them beliefs, by saying, how does that serve me? How does that belief serve me? And that can you can kind of question your own belief then.
Definitely. It's like having that belief is, or a useful belief to keep hold of is not able to physically fly. So if somebody puts a cape on you and you're on the top of a building, it's probably not a good belief to think that I can fly off that building.
Don't try that at home, folks.
No. Absolutely.
But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, look, that's the thing when you're young, people tell you something, and if you trust them, you believe them, and sometimes people will instill negative beliefs in you, which and sometimes they'll instill positive beliefs. But like that, you should always be able to examine your beliefs and to be able to be questioned on your beliefs and to look at them objectively and to say, well, actually, this is what I believe. What's the evidence behind this? Can I actually substantiate in any way, shape or form what I believe in? Because of course, then that brings us to sort of confirmation bias as well, that if you believe, and actually I was just talking about this earlier on today, if you think that someone's, you don't like somebody, and then you see them doing something. So actually at the time we were talking about this, I was in the gym. So I was saying, if say for example, if somebody you don't like and you see them over there and you go, oh, look at them showing off with their big weights and all that sort of stuff, or if they make a mistake or they can't handle it too, you go, oh God, look at them, and whereas if it's someone you like, you're going, oh, aren't they great now? Look at them, they only just started a couple of weeks ago and look how much progress they're making, and it's the same person doing the very same thing, but you're just looking at it through different eyes, you're just confirming your own bias. And that happens in everything in life. It happens in relationships, it happens in and we do it to ourselves all the time, and it's great if you have a good healthy set of beliefs. It's great that you can confirm or whatever those beliefs, but quite often you have people who put themselves down and they think, oh, who am I? Like everyone else is looking at me going, who's your man think he is, or that sort of thing, whereas in fact everybody else is there more worried about themselves and how they're getting on, and they're not even looking at you,
Yeah,
it's a great point.
You can look at beliefs in 4 ways as well. So beliefs are concepts that we hold to be true, and values are ideas that we hold to be important. Values govern the way we behave, communicate, and interact with others, and beliefs and values determine our attitudes and opinions. So if we look at something if we're looking at something that we hold to be true, then that belief could possibly be slightly harder to break, because it may not necessarily be true, but because our belief could be so ingrained within us, within our own psyche, is that we find it harder to break out of that belief system we hold.
And a lot of emotion, like I can believe a lot of emotion, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I suppose that's one place where NLP comes in very useful, very handy, particularly working through the meta programs, or using meta language, questioning beliefs. And we find it very useful when we're dealing with people, working with people, and just getting them to look at their beliefs from a slightly different angle, from a slightly different point of view, and something that they always believed or they always felt, something that was limiting them, something that was holding them back. And suddenly they look at it from a different angle. And next thing you're seeing a shift in that belief, and it's sort of like, well, is that true? And it's a great way to get people to question their beliefs, because people often, they use, I suppose, certain language patterns to defend the belief in a way that people can't attack it. For example, the use of things like nominalizations, and nominalization is basically a noun, a verb that has been changed into a noun, and one actually useful word to recognize as nominalization is the word relationship. Because if you look at a relationship, like the word itself is relate. So you might say, how do I relate to people? How am I relating to this person? And that's a very fluid thing, right? Whereas relationship is kind of like, it's a box. You just put something in a box and then it's like stuck there and it can't move, it can't grow. Whereas when you talk about relating to someone, how you relate to a person changes all the time. Maybe in the morning you're relating well, and then in the afternoon, not so well, and in the evening then, that sort of thing. So that changes all the time, how people are, how they act, and particularly over years. Because whereas if you have a relationship, stick it in a box, there's no room for growth. You expect it to stay the same from the very first day to the very last day. And of course it doesn't. But what you're doing is you're jamming in people's ability to grow in themselves.
Yeah, because you can have idealized perception of a person stuck in a frame of time.
Yeah.
And throughout that time, they may have grown and may have changed, but still have that perception of them as, say, a 25-year-old when they're 65.
Yeah, and you expect them to behave the same way towards you. And like the thing about it is that one thing that people do is, like, nobody's perfect. So you meet someone, say you're in your teens, 20s, whatever, and you're not even fully developed human at that stage. You're not a fully matured adult, they really. And so of course you still have maturing to do, you still have growing up to do. So so they tend to like pull up with your stuff, for want of a better word. And and then what happens is you expect them to continually put up with that for the next 10, 20, 30, 50, 60 years, whatever it might be. And eventually the time comes where they go, well, actually, do you know what, I've had enough of your stuff. And sometimes people will say, well, look, if you love me, you'll just accept me for who I am. And you go, well, yes and no. That if you're doing stuff wrong, you need to learn and you need to grow. You're not 20 something anymore. You need to mature. You need to be able to look at things a little bit differently. And you should always be growing. You should always be, again, when you stick it in a box, you say, okay, I expect you to be in that box and to never change, and I'll never change, and we'll just be exactly the same as we are for the next million years or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, a great point there, lads, because like, when you meet someone first, it's all you look at all the good points and you ignore any bad points, and like then after years and years. Like, and if they're having any arguments, like they probably look at the start focusing on the stuff you're doing wrong then.
Well, having that relationship in that box, there's a kind of certainty about it. When people begin to change or you're relating to somebody differently, there develops an uncertainty into how that person is going to be in the future.
Absolutely, yes, you're right. You're right. And the thing about it is that, for example, you might have a situation where, say, the wife stays at home, is looking after the kids, and he's out working all the time, and that's all fine and well. And then the kids get that little bit older, she has a bit more freedom there in school. Maybe she does a bit of work for a few hours, and suddenly he's looking at, oh, this woman who was totally dependent on me suddenly is more independent. She has money coming in herself. She's got people in work who are respecting her, who are treating her well. They think she's doing a great job, all that sort of stuff. And he can start to feel, I suppose, threatened to a certain extent. Or, and at that point, that's really the place where there needs to be communication. You need to recognize that actually it's not a relationship, it's how you relate to each other. And it continuously changes.
Well, the classic book on that is Educating Rita.
I heard that before. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, good movie too.
Yeah.
Filmed in Dublin.
Oh yeah, I've never seen that.
That's good. Michael Caine's in it, and I should know her name. I know her name. What's her name, Rich? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
She plays Mrs. Weasley, doesn't she, in Harry Potter?
You'll have to edit all this out, Mark.
Yeah.
All you'll hear is Mark's voice, doing this over thing, going, "Oh, this is her name."
Yeah. Got it.
We'll edit that
light bulb moment.
Very good.
I was going to say there as well, lads, that the way we're saying about beliefs and kind of getting people to question them if their beliefs aren't serving them. But you said earlier on, Finn, you said a good point about where you're looking at somebody who's doing weights and they say, like, they're doing that wrong and they believe they're doing it right. But it's a good way to kind of look at their model of the world and accept their model of the world rather than just going and saying you're doing it wrong is a very important point as well.
Yeah, well, one way of them realizing they're doing it wrong could be severe injury.
Yeah,
it could be as simple as that.
Yeah, definitely. But what I mean by that is, Rich, if just say somebody's belief is wrong for whatever reason, just say they think the earth is flat. That's for an example. And don't you say, like, you get people that we say, are you stupid? Like, are you to put them down rather than doing that? You kind of you see their map of the world and how they see it, and you build rapport with them. Like, so what makes you, like, asking the meta model questions, like you said, Fintan, can be very useful.
That's very true, yeah. And again, it's all about getting people to look at things from a slightly different angle, and to see, and, like, for example, the thing about it is that if you come across someone and, as you say there, say, I loved your use of the phrase, their map of the world, their map of the world is flat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Their model of the world is flat. And actually, that's, I think, where some of it comes from. They say, well, if the map is flat, then how come the globe is round, and that. So you have you have that situation. But the thing about it as well is that when someone holds something at a belief level, and the only way for them to like, even producing proof to them means then they are inclined to ignore that proof. We've lots and lots of examples of people proving to flat earthers, if you like, that the world is round. And in fact, sure, it was done before the time of Christ. The ancient Greeks proved that it was the Earth was round, and they could even measure the size of the Earth. They could measure the circumference of it.
Well, the pyramids relate to this.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was done
Again,
in
Rich?
The pyramids relate to the circumference of the Earth and things like that. There's a whole mathematical equations written into the pyramids.
Yeah.
And
but the thing about it is that if someone believes it, no amount of proof will necessarily change it, unless, as Rich said, suddenly they get injured or something like that, and then they realize, or somebody else is in danger, someone they really cared about is in danger as a result of that belief, then that will be enough to change it. But sometimes it takes something as much of that to. But again, what are they doing? They're changing the way they look at this as something, to change the way they're looking at a situation and a belief. And that's the only way to actually get them to change their belief.
Yeah, because if someone's got an ingrained belief and you're going against their belief, they may tend to double down on that and get more entrenched in their belief, looking for more reasons why their belief is so relevant and correct.
Great point. Yeah. Because what you could kind of say to them as well is that when did you first have this belief? When did you first have this belief? Like looking back, from years ago, that will kind of get them thinking.
Very true. Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose you could use, like in that case, regression, or you could use timeline. Get them to go back to the situation, the scenario where they develop this belief. Like, for example, someone is afraid of wasps, and just to go back to the time when they realized that they were afraid of wasps, and how they were, young, because normally things like that, phobias and that, they start when a child is around 3 or 4 years of age, or younger. And the thing about it is that the first time they have a phobic reaction isn't actually the time the phobia developed. The phobia was instilled prior to that, So getting someone to go back to the day before the first phobic reaction, and then getting them to go back and look at what happened. So, for example, one example was that I heard used was someone was afraid of snakes, and he remembered the first time that he had a phobic reaction, but there was nothing unusual in that. He was walking down the road, saw the snake, had a complete phobic reaction. It was only when they went back to when he was much younger that they realized that what happened was his brother had been chasing him with like a toy snake and threw it at him, and he got a fright. And then that was instilled in his mind. And then when he saw the real snake, he had the phobic reaction. And that's what actually happened, So again, we have lots of people who have phobias, whether it's spiders, snakes, wasps, lots of other things, and they all come from somewhere. They all come from something. So just being able to go back to that first incident and being able to work through it, and really makes a big difference.
Yeah, they stem from beliefs. Like all these phobias stem from beliefs that, like, maybe your parents said years ago to you, like, and like even your diet. Let's say, for instance, you thought bread and sausages and all that, they were naturally your food that you're going to eat. But when you get older and you realize that your diet is bad because of this stuff, that's serving a different belief. The belief of white bread, too much white bread is bad for you, and like our diet, like, so that can have a better belief, so to speak.
Yeah, changing diet for a more healthier one is definitely good belief change.
I suppose that's kind of based as well on your priorities. Like when you're a kid, actually I was in work today, and one of the guys was leaving, so there was some cakes and stuff, and of course there was too many cakes and too many sweets, and there was some left over. And they said, oh, well, sure, do you want to bring some home to the kids, like, and one of the girls made the comment along the lines of, oh, they'd sell themselves for sugar, like, and they would eat anything sweet whatsoever, like, you know. And the thing about it is, when you're a kid, that's your priority, you know. It's like, oh, I really like, I'm eating this stuff because it tastes really nice. But it's only as you get older, your priorities change, you know. So I suppose another way to change beliefs is to look at priorities, you know. And you say to yourself, well, if I'm going to eat all this sugar, then my health is going to deteriorate. And I think about it as well is that as you're a kid, if you're active and you're growing all the time, you're not necessarily going to see any bad repercussions from it. It's only when you stop growing that you stop growing up, start growing out, and things like that. You no longer have the energy to, maybe you know, you're not playing football anymore or whatever it is. You're not as active as you were, and suddenly you start seeing your health deteriorate. And even then, it's not enough sometimes until they get some sort of a medical warning, you know. So
Even that,
the
even then, that doesn't work out for some people. They still continue the same habit because of it may be a secondary reason why they're doing that particular habit.
Yeah,
it's too traumatic for them to face.
Maybe we could do a podcast talking about that sometime. Just a bit, about the different kind of what makes people do these habits. Might be an interesting one.
Yeah. So as Vinton was saying earlier, addiction, about normalization. So addiction, that's normalization. So some people are addicted to something or other. So if you can change that language from addiction to what are you addicted to, or whatever is more beneficial to that person.
Yeah. No.
Normalizations of words. So addiction is the normalization of the word addicted, or addicts, or addicting. And so somebody gets stuck in that time frame of the addiction of alcohol, gambling, sex, pornography, whatever it is, and they can't really move from that time frame or that space. Then they're stuck there. So using a useful word like addicted or addicts or addicted to is probably more of a useful word than addiction. Because the opposite of addiction is love and connecting with other people. I don't know if you come across the experiments where they did with the rats. And they put the rats in cages. They had one bottle filled with cocaine and water. The other one was filled with water. And because these rats were absolutely bored out of their heads, they went to the bottles that had the cocaine in it just to give them some sort of thrill, some sort of excitement. Then this scientist, he realized that the whole system was flawed and wrong. So he made a rat city and made it really entertaining and enjoyable for the rats. Had a load of rats in there. And then they had the same water bottles, with one with cocaine and one with water in it. And all the rats ended up, may have tasted the cocaine one, but they never went back to it. They were always drinking out of the one with the water. So they had that connection, they had that love between each of the rats.
Wow. Yeah. Really.
That's excellent, Rich. Thanks very much for that.
Thanks very much for that. Yeah. Okay, so we're come to the end of the podcast, episode 12. My apologies, I thought it was 11 earlier on. But no, I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. So we're gonna do scale on lay, a story of the day. So I think it's my turn to do it. So like I'm thinking back to a number of years back. I was like when I was in school and doing my junior cert around that time, and my teacher wasn't very kind to me. Like he didn't think I was ever going to. He actually said to me, "You're never really gonna. If you don't book up, you're never gonna go anywhere with your life." You know. So I kind of remembered that. So years later, I was doing a gig. I was asked to do a gig, DJ gig, not far from where I live, and I went down, and the night was going really well. I was playing great tunes, everybody was dancing, and the whole lot. And who was there? Who had to pay me? the teacher, and I enjoyed taking that money off him. And he said, he's from Cork. Well done, boy. You done very well. And I said, I know I did. Thank you.
Very good, Mark. Thanks very much for that. Scale and lay.
Awesome.
And now for the question lay, the question of the day. And I suppose based on what we were talking about earlier, beliefs, beliefs and questioning our beliefs. Maybe this is a good time for us to question our beliefs. What are the self-limiting beliefs that you hold that perhaps you could do with questioning now and moving forward?
Thanks very much for that, Fintan.
Awesome. Yeah. Food for thought.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay, so listen, thanks very much for tuning into today's podcast, NLP Upskill Your Life, episode 12. So just to mention as well, that book, Teaching Excellence by Kate Benson and Richard Bandler, really worth a read. Great book for as we said earlier on, for kids and adults alike, you know. So anything else to add, lads, before we go?
Oh, there's also, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Carry on, Fintan.
No, go on, Rich. Yeah.
I was going to say another book worth reading about belief change is Educating Rita, just to reinforce that.
Absolutely. And also a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. One I must look out for.
Absolutely. It's well worth your while watching it, Mark, I have to say. Very good movie.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And again, if you want us to discuss anything on the podcast at all, you know where to do. You can put it on our Facebook group, or you can also send us an email to nlpupskillerlife@hotmail.com. Okay, so thanks very much, lads.
Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks, Rich. And thanks, everybody, for listening.
Cheers, guys. And thanks. Yeah. And thanks, everybody, for listening and watching.
Yeah. Take care.
Cheerio.
Slán.